No, she can't come. Oh, she didn't call you? She was gonna call you? To the room. Oh, okay. Oh, I did it. I did it. I called to tell you the room. Cause, Karen called me, and then he said, "We So, end of my day. Look at my day. I said, "We're running left, right."
All right, I think we're going to get started. I have something I have to read before we start. It's not a disclaimer or anything, but I do have to read it. Please be sure that all paraeducators at your site who are taking this research class for credit have typed their name in the chat box. Once all names have been typed in, click on the chat button on the bottom right of the chat box. This will email the attendance for your site. You do not need to sign in if you are only attending the class for professional growth or no credit. Credit will only be given to those paras who have signed in. Failure to do so will mean you get no credit for the class and you will have to start over next year. I have 2 computers going in this room, so if you have a question, feel free to put it, I can't see them on the computer I'm on, but we have one in the room that maybe I'll ask somebody just to let me know if a question comes up on the side. I hope everyone has the PowerPoint and the handouts. They were posted in about the middle of February because I was going out of town and I kept thinking, well, if the plane crashes or something, somebody else can give the talk if I have turned it all in. So if not, download it from the paraeducator site. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Kiernan. I work for Keystone AEA. I am a half-time speech pathologist at Epworth Elementary, and I am a half-time autism consultant. I cover Western Dubuque, Maquoketa Valley, West Delaware, and EDCO for autism. And today I'm not talking about autism. Usually I do. I am talking about building independence. I have 2 grown children, 2 grandchildren. This is my 40th year of teaching. I started teaching before they invented IEPs and parental permission and all that good stuff. So that shows you how old I am, I guess. So we'll get started. Okay. I am speaking from the Dubuque office, so there are other people here with me because I didn't want to sit in Delhi and give this to myself. It would be lonely, and I do better when there's other people around. So we're talking independence. And what independence is being free from influence, guidance, or control of others. It also means you're not influenced or determined by someone or something else, and it means you're self-reliant. And most of you are probably parents, and that's what we want for all of our kids when they're born. We want them all to grow up and be independent adults. Well, that's the same with special ed kids. We want them to grow up and be as independent as possible when they're adults. And independence might look different for every student we teach. For a little kid, it might be putting their snow pants on by themselves. It might be feeding themselves. It might be, for a middle school or high schooler, keeping track of their own assignments rather than having the para write in the book for them. Or it might just be as simple as recognizing when they need help and asking for it. And I think this child looks like a future independent soul, which is why I put her in. What it means for students. I am the parent of a special ed student. She's an adult now and lives independently and works independently and is a fine person. But I think independence builds up their self-esteem and their confidence. They feel better about themselves if they do things. And they're also willing to take more chances if you show them that they can do some stuff by themselves, whether they're 3 or they're 16. They might be willing to try something new, too. None of us like the unknown, but special ed kids fail so often that they really hesitate to try anything new. What it means for these students is growth. It builds up their skills. And if you can do this, if you can, put on your own snow pants, then there are a lot of other things you can do. And it affects your future. The level of independence you see in students reflects to the teacher and to future employers their expectations of that student. If you've got a real dependent student, odds are when they grow up, they're not going to become the CEO of a company. If they're very dependent, even they may have trouble working in a sheltered workshop. But if you have built independence, they can go out and find a living wage and become a voter and have a good life. But if we coddle them or say, oh, that's too hard for you, you better let me do that, we're affecting their future. And I know that sounds weird, but really, I deal with a lot of post-secondary organizations, and they will say to us, you can't send these kids who need a one-on-one adult with them all the time, who can't set the alarm, can't do that kind of stuff. We need people who can work with maybe a 1-to-8 ratio. And so we really need to build these kids up in independence. So how IEPs talk about independence is adaptive behavior. And adaptive behavior is defined as a change of an individual or a group in adjustment to new or modified cultural surroundings. So when we talk in IEPs, from the time the kids are 14 on, we have to do what we call a transition IEP. And we have to sit down with the parents and with the student and say, where do you think you'll live when you're 18? What do you think you'll be doing? And granted, what they think they're going to be doing at the age of 14 is probably, they might think they're going to direct sci-fi features or something. But we make them start thinking about, okay, if you want to be an accountant, what kind of classes will you have to take to become an accountant? What do you need to become an accountant? And then we look at 3 areas: living, working, and leisure. And we talk to the parents about, where do you foresee them living? For some students, it's quite acceptable and realistic for a parent to say, I see him living in a sheltered apartment complex, or a group home or something. And for others, legitimately, we want to say, oh no, they're going to be living on their own, riding the bus to work, getting to work themselves, all that good stuff. So we start, by the time they're 14, talking about it, but we have to start building the skills before that.
Can you repeat that definition?
Which one? Somebody asked me to repeat the definition. The what?
Change of an individual
Oh.
or group.
Oh, change of an individual or group in adjustment to new or modified cultural surroundings. So when we're doing a transition IEP, teachers will do a lot of checklists of adaptive behavior, and for them, when we're looking at their future, the adaptive behavior runs from, can they dress themselves? Can they do laundry? Can they ride the bus, a city bus? Can they call and order a pizza and pay for it when it's delivered and know enough to tip? So they cover the gamut of adaptive behavior skills, not just academics. Because academics is what drives schools, but adaptive behavior is what drives adults. The ratio of academic skills taught to adaptive behavior skills, and I shouldn't beat this with you guys, but I do with teachers. By the time kids get to be in 7th and 8th grade, their adaptive skills goals should far outweigh their academics. Because we have kids who are very smart, who we know will not make it in college or at a work site because they don't have the adaptive skills to do that. And we have to keep in mind with adaptive behavior, there are more opportune times to teach some adaptive skills. The other day, one of the teachers was telling me they were teaching showering skills to someone who was 16. And she said, you know, it would have been much easier to teach him when he was 5 than now that he's 16 and someone's stood in the bathroom for 16 years and told him how to take a shower and what to do next. So we have to keep that in mind. It's easier to teach to ask for help when you're little than when it's been ingrained in you for 15 years that you're not going to ask for help. Some of you may have already heard the story, but probably 5-6 years ago I got called to go see a student who was a senior in high school. And I observed him in 4th year German and in physics and in English 4. He was getting all A's. He had a full-time associate. And he had all A's. And I said to him, well, what does the associate do for you? And he said, well, she tells me when my work is due and what I should work on now. And so then I said to his parents, I said, well, does he get himself up in the morning? No, I'd never set an alarm clock, didn't own an alarm clock. But they thought he was going to go off to college somewhere. And so I said to him, well, what happens if you get a roommate that you don't like? He said, oh, well, then they'll just change it. And I said, oh, okay. I thought, well, maybe it changed since my kids went to college. But I also, he told me that some schools had said they pair him up with another freshman. And I said, well, what will you expect that person to do? And he said, well, I'll expect him to tell me when to stop playing video games and go to class and when to do my homework. What he was going to expect was for this student to do exactly what the associate had done for him. And the day I was there, the associate he had sold items, food items for the band, and she was going around with the items collecting the money because he didn't know how to do that. So we did a great disservice to him. I went to the meeting and said to everyone at school and AEA, I said, we failed big time. This kid's not ready for anything. And I have no idea what happened to him, but they were going to try and make big changes in like 4 months before he graduated because he had all these great marks and he wasn't going to survive. All right, so your job is to help students become independent, to help them adapt. You guys are with special ed students much more than their teachers are. So you're going to have to spot the chances to increase independence, and you're also going to have to encourage students to take chances. And I do feel strongly that if you can't laugh and be entertained by the kids we deal with, you should probably get a different job, because if not, you'll go crazy. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind, you will not lose your job if you make this student independent, because I can assure you, I test a lot of preschoolers, and there's more coming. So you'll make one independent, and there'll be another one for you. If our students are not ready to work and live independently, they will fail after school, and they will be sent back home. I've had that happen. Or they will be moved to a more restricted place, and we don't want that. And that means we failed. And when I say they might work and live independently, I don't mean totally independent, because we've got kids, I have students, former students that live in apartments and get checked on, but get themselves to work and home again, but somebody watches their money and stuff. That's pretty independent. We'd hope that for a lot of kids. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about some guidelines, and we're going to talk about some tools to use. We're going to talk about spotting places in the day that you can build independence, and we're going to talk about assessing situations to spot the opportunities to build independence. The guidelines, this is the hardest one. Number one is wait. Now, I am a speech pathologist, and you know my job is talking. Talk all day. I want people to talk. This one kills me. It's very hard to do, at least for me, and my husband would agree to this. The other thing is independent actions by special ed kids may never be as fast as a regular ed kid, and that's okay. We all march to the beat of our own drums, and we just have to wait. But I would advise you not to do anything until you see what they can do without you. You know, I think sometimes we jump in, we're like, oh, you know, I'll just help you with your snow pants today because we really need to get outside, you know. When I get invited to wedding showers, I know this seems like it's off the topic, whenever they say, what piece of advice would you give to the bride? I always say, don't do anything once that you don't want to do for the rest of your life. And I don't mean sexual. I mean, you know, if you don't want to pick up your husband's dirty clothes for the rest of your life, don't do it. Because I think that's what happens as you get in the groove. You do it once and they go, oh, this is great. This was marriage. She'll pick up my clothes. And we do the same things in school. You know, some days we're rushed or everybody else is out the room and we're like, oh, come on. And we do it and then we're doomed. And I know autistic kids will jump on it, and I think the rest will too. If you do it for them, they'll let you. Guideline number 2, this must be out of order. It is. This is one of the handouts, this prompt hierarchy. The prompts support and assist are provided to the child or the adolescent. And they help them acquire skills and experience success. They're highly effective when used correctly. But the trick is you have to use them correctly. Okay? So if the classroom teacher gives a direction, you wait. And you wait 20 seconds, which is forever. It really is. And if they don't respond, you repeat it or do the prompt again, and you allow 10 more seconds. If the child still doesn't respond, you're going to go to a more supportive prompt. And you're going to start with the least supportive prompt and fade away. So we're going to talk about that some more. So you're going to wait 20 seconds. Now, the other part of that handout, the instructional prompts, a natural cue is, like it says here, the bell rings for class. Or the teacher says, everybody find your feet by the door. We're going to go to the gym. And everybody runs to line up except our boy, who is off in another world. That's in the handouts, not in the, it was a separate download. So if that one doesn't work, the natural one, the next one you would do is a gesture, which, if it was for lining up, might be pointing at the lined up children. See if he gets that. If not, the next would be an indirect verbal of, oh, I'm so glad to see Jacob lined up. You know, and then look at our guy like, well, come on. Another one would be to just say, Larry, line up. Modeling would be saying, Larry, watch me line up and do it. Partial physical assistance would be taking their elbow and moving them, starting them to move toward the line and then letting go and see if they can keep going. Full physical, which we've all done, is to literally take them by the hand and put them in line. And that's the one we don't want to do. But if you have to, then the next time, see if you can't go to partial physical. Try to step down from it, to do the least restrictive. So we already went through the prompt hierarchy. My slides were in the wrong order, sorry. But keep in mind, you're going to wait 20 seconds after the first prompt. And that's the hardest thing. And then you're going to wait another 10 after you repeat it or do something. The guidelines continued. This one, a friend of mine, Jenny Becker, who's a social worker, I was asking people what kind of guidelines, you know, we would tell associates. And she said, be quick, be quiet, be gone. And I liked this one. It had a ring to it to me. If we want to build independence, we have to be subtle. You have to make your suggestions fast. You have to make your suggestions or directions quietly. And once you do your thing, you have to get away, because the child is not independent if he needs an adult standing beside him or near him. And I think we all know that. What happens is most of us think of prompts as verbal, and that's a mindset we have to change. Those are the most intrusive ones, the verbal ones. We really have to go to gestures or to visuals of some kind, but verbal is the last one we want to do. The fourth guideline is be exact. And I can tell you some stories that'll go with this. Years ago, I had a little girl on the spectrum, and the special ed teacher and I were doing a group activity, and we said, go over to Mrs. Harris's room and see if she has any scissors we can borrow. So the little girl left, came back, sat down. I said, well, she said, yes, she does. No scissors, no scissors. And, you know, I looked at the special ed teacher and I said, that's our fault. We weren't specific, you know. Another story that I'm still entertained with did not happen to me, but I heard about it, and this happened in Dubuque. A child in a preschool classroom, the teacher said, you have to do this paper, and you can't move on to the next activity until you put that paper in my hand. And so she went about her business doing other stuff and was in the restroom, and a little hand came under the door with the paper for her, because she had been very exact about it. But, you know, you have to think about what you say with them. Sometimes we're too up in the clouds, and sometimes it's like, oh, okay, there's a happy medium, but be exact. The last one is, it's okay to tell them what not to do. You know, we spend a whole lot of time telling these guys, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But you also need to tell them what to do. I have a quote over my desk in Delhi, and it says, if you tell a child 1,000 times to do something and he still doesn't do it, who is the slow learner? And it's true. You know, I can't tell you how many teachers, they'll say to me, I must tell him 20 times a day to do this, and he still doesn't do it. Well, then you better change something, because if he's still not doing it, odds are you can tell him for 4 more years and he still won't do it. They don't know what to do, a lot of them, unless you tell them. If you tell them, don't do this, you better tell them what else. For a lot of regular ed kids, they develop an insight, or they learn from others' mistakes. I always, you know, special ed kids are the ones that tend not to know that the joke you heard in the locker room is not one you repeat to the principal. Or, you know, regular ed kids figure that out, and special ed kids just lose that somewhere. They don't get that. So we have to tell them that, you know. So if they keep interrupting and you say, don't interrupt, then at some point you better tell them what to do instead. Like raise their hand or say, excuse me, Mrs. So-and-so, can I talk to you? But it's fine to tell them to stop interrupting. You just have to tell them what to do instead. If they're blurting out the answer in class, you have to tell them what to do instead, because they're just so anxious to answer. But you have to fix it. If they're hitting someone who has taken their seat, which happens in preschools, then you better give them a better method, one where they use words before they hit or something. You know, at least give the student a warning. So those are the guidelines. And they're not the be-all, end-all, but they're my guidelines. So we're going to talk about some tools for independence, and these are going to include visuals and low-tech devices, nonverbal gestures, adaptive equipment, high-tech devices, and peers. And I didn't know if they were high or low-tech, but they're very useful. So we're going to talk about visual schedules. Now this could mean, for little kids, it might mean pictures. For middle school and high school, it can be their assignment book, their agenda book. We can use them to sequence the order you do something in an activity. And why we use them is they're more subtle than your voice. They're permanent. They don't go away like your voice. Nobody can argue with them. They can't say, oh, I forgot you said that, or oh, I didn't hear that. It's like, oh no, it's on the piece of paper. You have to do it. And the key thing for me is visuals mean the directions don't vary from one adult to another. So if the teacher says it's done this way, visually, then the pair is going to say it's done this way, or vice versa. Whoever set it up, it's not going to vary, and that's key for these kids, because sometimes too many people giving directions is hard. Oh, and I just thought of something. I hate to go back, but when we talk about giving directions and the prompt hierarchy and stuff, I think it's real important that if you gave the first prompt or the first direction, like, Jacob, it's time to line up, then I think you have to stick with it. And vice versa. If the teacher said, Jacob, line up, then let her keep doing it. I think it's hard on kids when we switch who's given directions. So whoever starts, and I don't care who it is, they need to stick with it to the bitter end, because students need to recognize that they need to follow your direction, and they also need to follow the teachers, you know. But I think just one person, I think it's confusing because sometimes, especially when kids get ornery, sometimes like 4 people are telling them what to do, and I'm like, he's not going to do anything now because he's mad. There are a whole lot of variety of schedules. We have kids who are on pictures that are left to right. We have some that just do now, next, because they can't handle more than that. We have some that do half day. We have some that go top to bottom. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. But the activity order, a lot of times I'll have teachers or parents just tell me what are the usual directions. You know, in primary classes, it's cut, color, paste, fill in, those kind of things. If we can put them on little cards and reuse them, you can, like work time for a student, you could put that on the edge of their desk and say, first you're going to color, then you're going to cut, then you're going to paste. Done. And keep them going. And then, if you walk past and they're not working, you're just going to tap the one they're on. You don't have to say it. Just tap it. And sometimes you may think you're going to put your finger through the desk because you're tapping hard, because it's your 20th time around. But stick to that, because that's better than your voice. Another thing I like to do is event pre-planning. And this is simply, you just tell them what's going to happen. What behaviors are going to be acceptable and expected. What the safety issues and concerns are. How long it will last. And what happens when it is over. And, you know, sometimes we poo-poo this stuff. But I just went on a vacation. And, you know, I must have read my itinerary 2,000 times. And I'd get on one plane and get out the itinerary again and see, where am I going next? And the first day we were at our location, we went to a thing where you could plan what you were going to do. And it was 3 couples. And the 3 men were like, yeah, we don't need that. The 3 wives were like, yeah, we need a plan. Well, you know, we came out of there, we had a plan, and the three ladies were much more comfortable with the plan than the men who were like, well, we'll just hang. And it probably would have survived that way, but we felt better with a plan. So it might be telling the preschoolers about the field trip to the pumpkin patch. What time we're going to leave? Do you bring your lunch? All that stuff that you probably said out loud or the teacher did in class, but our guy doesn't remember. And those are the kinds of things mothers love to hear, is what happens when. For a school-age kid, it might be the steps involved in the party happening next week in class. For middle school, it might be going to a track meet as part of the track team, what it will look like. For those kinds of kids, especially special ed kids, you need to make sure they know that if they're on the track team, if they're not running an event, it's not okay to go hang in the locker room. Those kind of safety issues. We don't think of them, but in middle school they become real imperative. They can also get in big trouble in an empty school. For a high schooler, it might be identifying the expectations of being student manager for the JV football team. You know, most kids would just slide into it. Our guys probably would. And this isn't just, I do this a lot for kids on the spectrum, but it's not just for kids on the spectrum. If your student goes to an activity like this and does fine, no one will say a word to you. If he doesn't do fine, you will hear about it tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, because that's what happens. Other teachers and other people in the building only notice the bad things. I mean, think about when you go in the lounge, nobody talks about the wonderful things kids do. They talk about the fiasco things kids do. So if our kids don't do an event smoothly, we're going to know it. We'll get crucified. And like I said, we all like to know what's going to happen in an event. If you go to something you've never been to, you like to know what's happening. I went to a bar mitzvah a couple years ago, and it was a great thing, except I had not a clue what was going on, so I was nervous for 4 hours. And then I went to the party, and women sat on one side of a building and men on the other with a wall between them. So then I was really lost. I didn't even have my husband to hang on to. So I would have liked to have known ahead of time what the expectations for this bar mitzvah was. And I think we're all like that. If we hit things, new things, we want to know what to expect. So the next slide is an event happening, volunteering at the Humane Society. And it just says, another student and I went to the Humane Society and went through the volunteer training. And so we went through the training. So I said, you remember, look at all your notes from the volunteer training. And then we just went through. You have to sign in. You have to greet the person behind the counter. Then you go back and pick out an animal to pet or play with. You take them to the designated area. You stay with them. You play with them. You toss a ball, all that stuff. After a half hour, you can pick a different animal. And after 2 animals, you're done for the day. Then I said the expected behavior is you have to be courteous to everyone. Signs that say employees only mean you have to stay out unless told to go in. If the animal poops while you're working with them, you must clean it up. Some animals are being tested, watched, and may have a sign on their cage that says, do not take them out. Do not take them out. And you have to sign in and out. The safety issues are you have to sign in and out. If you need to use a restroom, return the animal to its pen or cage. If you are bitten or scratched, tell the person at the front desk right away. Volunteering will take about 1 hour. After this, you can go home or do whatever else you had planned. So I tried to cover every contingency, and I gave this to the student before we went. So she had about a week to look at it and to know, okay, I know the rules. Well then, when we went, I didn't have to remind anybody of the rules. She knew the rules, and she followed them fine. And it took some of the newness out of it for her. So, and I would be happy, at the end of this is my email. If you ever have to write one for anybody, I'll be happy to help you. Okay, sharing and answering in class. If it's their turn to share, rehearse it. I'm a firm believer in practice. If it's answering in class, maybe you can arrange with the teacher to know what question she'll ask Johnny, and then you practice it. Because we all work with kids who freeze like deer in the headlights when they get called on. And it would be nice if we could give them a little success with that. And maybe say, you know, if you don't want to pin down the exact question, say, you know, Johnny, she's going to either ask you this or this. Do you know those answers? And then make sure he does, or help him find them, and then he's kind of ready for it. Visuals, more visuals. Graphic organizers, they help students see relations between ideas. They help them see associations, and they help them organize their thoughts. And I put some examples in here. Graphic organizers, I was never one to use them when I wrote, so but they are effective. It's just I don't use them very well. So this one is one you could use, I think, if you were writing like in middle school or late elementary. If you had to write a paper that had to be X number of paragraphs, I think each of the subheads could be a paragraph with your ideas in them, and you could help the student organize it that way. This is another diagram. You know, it's dinosaurs. If he has to write about dinosaurs, or they have to know something, then let's see, what do they know about the dinosaurs that can fly? What do they know about the plant eaters? They probably could name some of them. I can't, but most of our boys can, and a lot of the girls. Fifth and sixth grade, if you have to compare fifth and sixth grade, then draw them a chart. See if they can write down what happens in fifth grade. Does it happen in sixth? You know, so that they can see the similarities and differences. And this is the infamous Venn diagram from math class and other stuff. This is another way to compare and contrast. You know, what are the things that are the same in fifth and sixth grade? Well, I would bet math, English, social studies, science, PE, lunch. There's a whole lot of things. If you've got kids nervous about going to sixth grade, then you could use this and say, well, there's a whole lot of the same in fifth and sixth grade. In Western Dubuque, the difference, one of the key differences is sixth grade goes to camp for 2.5 days. They, well, at least they did. If they saw the Girl Scout camp, then we're out of luck. Yeah. But they, you know, that's a big difference. But fifth and sixth in Western Dubuque are both in middle school. So really, the contrast isn't that great. They might have more teachers in sixth grade than they had in fifth. But it would be a nice way to allay fears that a student might have about transitioning. Visuals, lists, checklists, and charts, they give students an idea of how many things or steps need to be done. They help sequence activities. They give students questions to ask themselves and steps to take before seeking help from an adult. And you can use if-then statements to help them make decisions. So I've got some examples here. This is a morning routine. I went this morning to Cascade Elementary and videotaped a little guy who has been in school for 2 years, and he still comes in and floats around the room with his coat on for a while until someone literally tells him about 12 times to hang up his coat. So we videotaped him this morning following. He has visuals hanging up that he follows, a checklist. And when he knew I was videoing him, he did it perfectly, which was fun. It was fun to watch. But this kind of a checklist, I have a lot of kids who have this kind of a checklist. This is my morning routine. A lot of kindergartners I'll put this up for, and they just check it off. We laminate it, they check it off, and they're good to go. This is steps to do before you ask for help. You look at the work and you try one. Because Lord knows, Some of them don't try anything, they just know they can't do it. And I don't blame them some days, but, you know, if they just sat through the lesson on it, maybe they could do it. You look at the board, are there any hints there? Maybe they left examples up on the board that they could use. Look around at your friends. Ask one of them for help. So if they've done those 3 steps, then they can raise their hand and ask you for help. But you really need them to look first at other things, because that's independent, to look around and go, oh, wait, maybe I can figure this out. And granted, a lot of them can't. But maybe they could, at least about lining up stuff like that. Some if-then statements. You know, if you've got somebody that needs help and doesn't want to raise their hand, some classrooms have those red, yellow, green cups. You know, it's like your state of mind. Green, I'm good, I'm fine. Red means, oh, I need help big time. If you need help, turn your yellow cup over, is one. If you are done with math, then you read a book. If you are out of glue, you raise your hand and you ask for more. If there are no clean forks, you go to the counter and you ask for more forks. Because we've probably all been in the lunchroom where the whole line is halted because they were out of something and the one in front doesn't know what to do, so they just stand there and wait till the cook or someone notices, oh, okay, we're out of forks, we'll get them for you. So some of those, you know, they're common sense things, but some of us just don't have it. Low tech, we've got some things we use. Note takers. I have some high school kids who we just gave a nice peer carbon paper, and we just get a copy of their notes for my guy to study. Graphic organizers, we just looked at them. Cue cards. For some of our kids, or a lot of them, they really, really want to interact with peers or with the principal or the guidance counselor, but they don't know what to say. So they'll rush right up and smile and then stand there. So maybe a cue card, you know, that you went over a couple times, and it says, if I see Mr. Butler, I can ask him how his new baby is. If I see Mrs. Meisch, the guidance counselor, I can ask her about the new picture on her window of her office. You know, just things. If I see Miss Bonnie, who's me, they can ask me if I brought my Angry Birds with me or my iPad, you know. But give them something to say, because they so want to communicate, and that's an independent thing, to approach people and initiate. So you got to give them something to initiate with, because most of them already have the smile, they just don't know what to do beyond this one. And you can give them cue cards. Older kids, I have given, oh, what'd that do? Is everybody's screen doing that? Oh, okay. Can somebody go poke that other screen?
I think it timed out.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
It is pretty. We have a different screen in our computer now, but it's fixed, I think. There it is. Okay. And it doesn't stop at just little kids giving them words. I have given big kids words. If junior high and high school boys, if they get girl crazy, well, not even crazy, just interested, again, telling them not what to do is one thing, but then you better give them a better way to do it. So you're going to have to give them some opening lines. And I'm not talking, you know, like, let's go out on a date. I'm talking, did you see such and such a movie? Wasn't the social studies test horrible? Stuff like that. But give them some ideas of what's okay to say, rather than just telling them, don't go up to a girl and say, do you want to go out tonight neck or something, you know. I don't even know if necking is what they do anymore. Probably some other line, no. Yeah. Okay, so another low tech is teachers' notes. I have middle school and high school kids who get the teacher's notes because it's really hard to study for a test if you don't know what's important. And kids in the spectrum tend to study everything because they can't tell what's important, but most special ed kids don't get what's important unless they can tell it in the teacher's notes. I have another group that they get a partial outline with key words left off so that they still have to fill them in. It doesn't mean they can veg out in class. They still have to pay attention and write the word down, but they at least get the outline and stuff. In that same vein, I a lot of times will ask associates just to ask teachers, what's the emphasis of this test going to be on? And most teachers will tell kids that anyway, but you just want to verify, say, I just want to kind of give him a heads up on what to make sure he studies. That's not a crime, and it's not cheating if you're not giving him the answers. If you're just saying, you know, Dustin, it's really going to be over photosynthesis, so really crack on it, you know. We'll give him a prayer of passing. Cues for games. I have, you know, it's always important for kids to know when their turn is. And special ed kids never know when it's their turn unless you give them something. So, you know, maybe you have a star that when it's in front of you, it's your turn. It could be, if it's just a game between you and another person, it might be an arrow that points to you, and then you flip it back to the next person when it's not your turn, so they know whose turn it is. Cues for games, like for Go Fish, I write, if I am the asker, I say, do you have any blank? If they say yes, you take the card and ask for more. If they say no, you pull a card, your turn is over. I give them the whole script, the whole cue of how to play it, so that they don't need a lot of you saying, take a card, even though with little kids you have to say that all the time anyway, but at least we're giving them a fair shot at being independent. I also have like all the questions for Guess Who written out. If anybody wants them, email me. As a cheat sheet for them so they can go through and say, do you have a male? Do you have a female? Does your man have a mustache or whatever? You know, and then it'll say, if no, turn down the people with mustaches. Because that's the hardest part of that game, is making the inference of, they said no, what does that mean? So let me know if you want those. And for some of our kids, we use switches. I had a little guy who was partially paralyzed, and we had a switch that would flip the dice for us in games and stuff, so that he could still participate. You know, he could still roll the dice like everybody else. So there's a lot of things out there. Visuals. We're still at visuals. Nonverbal gestures. And I can't tell you how important this is, because I used to think it was just autistic kids didn't get nonverbal gestures, but I don't think a whole lot of kids do. They're more subtle than speaking. So once again, they're not hearing your voice, but you know, you can wave your finger at them. There are many universal ones. The trick is you have to clarify with the student what they mean before you use them. And it's going to be your job to identify ones the gen ed teachers use and help the student recognize and react to them. Since I go to a lot of buildings, you know, one I always hear is, give me 5. I have no idea what give me 5 means, but all 5 fingers stand for different things, and I don't know what they are, but so I always hope someone sat down with all the kids and went, the little finger means this, you know, because no one's ever explained it to me. I just know when they say give me 5, it means I better sit down and be quiet. But all teachers have gestures, and when I tell them this, they'll go, oh, no, I just do the regular ones. No, they don't. You know, all teachers have a way of conveying to their classes when they're mad, when they better be quiet, when they better buckle down, whether it's, you know, just giving you a mean look or pointing at the work or something, but they all have it, and most special ed kids don't get any of it. It'll be gone, and they'll still be the one dinking around that the teacher's going to get mad at. So it's really important you identify the gestures and then teach the kids that and remind them, you know, especially when they switch teachers, you're like, okay, now remember, this is a lady who, when she does this, means be quiet. So, and I put some gestures in here. We all know that one. But when I ask kids, it's always amazing to me what they don't know. So here's come here. Okay, a lot of kids don't get that one. They do get thumbs up, though. I like this picture. Yeah, and it's, I can't hear you, right? Oh, time. Time to get working. Adaptive equipment. Now, your best source for adaptive equipment is going to be your friendly neighborhood occupational therapist or her CODA. The other thing is to be on really good terms with your janitors or custodians, because they can make about anything you need, in my experience. And classroom teachers know a lot about adaptive stuff, but I'm always amazed at what the OTs come up with that blows my mind. So here's adapted scissors. This is just a regular little kid's scissors, but with that rubber band around it, it stays open. And so all they have to do is get this part, because the opening is the hard part for a lot of kids. So that will make them be able to cut. I think that's pretty cool and cheap, which is important. This is not a good picture. I guess I moved. I took it. But, you know, a lot of you wear visuals somewhere on your body for emergencies or for just regular, normal, walking down the hall stuff, cues that you're going to give the kids. This one I liked because some of our special ed kids, writing is horrible. It's something they detest, and it can also take them a long time. And Levi had to put his name on a lot of papers in a day. And Levi could take 5 minutes to write his name. So they got him this hand stamper. He stamps his name. He does the work. It's okay. It saved time, and it made Levi less rambunctious, at least because he was missing out on a lot of instruction time writing his name because he couldn't pay attention to two things. This is why I think janitors and custodians are lovely. This is the lunchroom at Colesburg. And kids, if their feet don't touch the floor, their balance is off. So anything you want them to do with their hands is going to be harder for them because they're teetering. And especially with these kinds of stools, there was no back. So they mentioned to the custodian, and he cut part of this carton off, and it was fine. And he did it in like 10 minutes. Another one, he took the seat off in between those two maroon seats. There was a third seat, and we couldn't get the child up to the table. So he just took the seat off. And this is my favorite. This little guy ate in the classroom, but he has a lot of motor problems. So someone had to literally sit and hold his tray in place because it kept moving as he kept eating. So they mentioned it to the custodian, and I don't know what he made this of, but he's made like 3 since. He had that the next day. So now the student sits and eats his lunch fine, just like everybody else, you know. And we put Velcro on the edges so that he could request things if he wanted it, or if he needs help, stuff like that. This is a bowl this same boy uses, and you can't tell from the picture, but the rim that's away from us is much higher than the one in front, so that for eating cereal or soup, he can do the scooping, and it doesn't slosh all over the table. It keeps it in the bowl, so he gets a good bite of it. Oh, I want to go back. And I should tell you that there's another one, and this one is easy, and it really does work. They make cups that part of it is cut out, the rim, so that the child can sip easily, and then you can transfer them to a real cup. But I have a little girl who used that this year, and now she doesn't need it anymore.
Schools need to make sure that use the adaptive equipment too.
Yeah, one of the paras in the room with me right now just said schools need to make sure paras know how to use the equipment, and I agree. I agree.
When I was still subbing, not subbing anymore, I'm permanent now, but I took a job at one of the schools here in Dubuque, and they put me with a little kid that was basically blind and used a braille machine.
And you didn't know how to use it.
And I had no clue how to use a braille machine.
That would be terrifying.
They expected me to do it. That's the second time it's come up. I put everything last week.
Yeah. One para, when she was subbing as a para, now she doesn't sub, but she got placed with a blind student, which was interesting if you don't have any training or any information on it. So it's not a good practice. High tech. We're going to talk iPads and computers and video modeling and on-comm devices. Now, through the magic of science, and maybe if I get this together, I'm going to go out of my PowerPoint, turn my iPad on, and you guys are going to see my iPad on the computer screen if I do everything right. So bear with me a few seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is it okay? I'm sitting right in front of it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye. Okay, I think I'm back. All right, so we're not going to do the apps because I think I cursed myself. So we'll keep going from here. We'll talk about it. This is something I saw in Colesburg. This is the Magic Pencil. I can't remember its official name. It's like the Magic Talking Pencil. But you can record like 10 seconds of talking for like up to 10 items. And so if it's your child's turn to be the calendar helper, you could record everything he was going to say if he was a non-talker, and he just literally run it over that. You know, you run it over it and say what it says. It will read it and say it. It's fun. And Colesburg has about 3 of them at the moment, and they're over $100. They're expensive, but they got them donated, and they are fun. They are fun for making kids independent. So the apps I was going to show you are all for bigger kids. But Evernote, Paranote are both ones that high school, middle school kids could use for classes. You can take notes, and what's cool with that, and in class is another one, they can take pictures and put them in their notes. So if the teacher has a huge diagram on the board, or has an outline, or even says, this is what your paper has to include to get a B, they can take a picture of it and it'll show up in Evernote, in Paranote, which is much better than you doing it and duplicating a diagram or something. The same with Idea Sketch is one you can make diagrams for organization, graphic things about how these two relate to this, to this, to this, so on and so on. It was a little hard for me to deal with, and I'm not techie, so it maybe will be really easier for other people. But I was able to use Evernote, Paranote, and in class. In class, I managed to get in and take notes and take pictures, record what the teacher was saying, because Evernote and Paranote and in class will do that too. So they were pretty handy. The shopping list one is cool. I thought of, my husband doesn't go to the grocery store very much, but you can, it literally has things you can type in, you can pull from a already made list, but you can also, I got thinking, like in our house, we only use Heinz ketchup. You know, if you brought Hunt's home, we wouldn't eat it. So you can take a picture of anything and it will put it in. So you can write ketchup and then take a picture of Heinz, or if you want an exact size, you know, if you're sending a student to the store, take the picture of what you want. Then you'll get the right thing. Somebody just said they like that for their husband. Yes, that's what I thought, but I didn't want to be nasty, but I thought, oh, I'd do that with my husband in a minute. Yeah. The Planner HD was okay. Remember, I'm not techie. I had a hard time with it, but I know some techie people I work with would poo-poo me and say, oh, it was easy. And it was highly recommended to me by these same people. So it's maybe worth a try. Yesterday I played with the RX Mind Me. It'll remind you when to take medicine. You can put in as many times a day as you want. You can put in as many medicines as you want. It will also keep track of who prescribed it to you, where you got it filled, when you can get it filled next, stuff like that, when it runs out. So it would be a good one for kids going into adulthood, I think, to use. Video modeling. You can get them off YouTube for some middle school. If there's a skill you want to teach someone, you could go to YouTube and you can find about anything you want. The trick with YouTube is you can also find a whole lot you don't want. And a lot of schools block it. So if you're going to use it, you may have to download it to a computer yourself. But make sure you watch it all the way through, because sometimes I'm trying to think of what I looked for last time, and I really had to weed through some pretty raunchy stuff before I was like, I better word this differently. I'm getting really an odd selection here. You can make homemade ones. I do that all the time. You know, like this morning, I videotaped this little guy. I probably have 15 minutes of videotape. And if you want him to do an expected behavior, you tape him doing it, and then you edit out all the time he wasn't doing it. And it doesn't have to be wonderful. Kids like to see themselves. They don't care, you know, if he's walking down the hall and the next shot he's in the door. But you edit out all the verbal prompting it took, and all the times he twirled or looked around the room or got distracted by something in the hall hanging on the wall. And so you show him a clean video of him doing his morning routine, or him walking in a line and staying in it and arriving with everybody else. That's what our aim was this morning. And they said with just me being there filming him, and he knew I was filming him, and I said, you know, Patrick, we're making a film about walking in line, and Mrs. Felton thought you would be a good person to star in the movie. He was pretty good. He stayed with the line, and he arrived on with the rest of the group, so we thought we had done a good job. So now I will edit it out. I will put a header on it of like, walking in line starring Patrick, and then we'll show it, and at the end I'll put another one that says, good job, Patrick. You know, you stayed in line, stayed with the group. And hopefully we send it home to Mom, we look at it at school, and maybe it'll change how he walks in line. We don't know. It can also, you can use them to sequence activities. There is one website that has, they're like YouTube, but they have cooking procedures, like recipes done visually on videos. So you can, if you're in a classroom that's doing cooking or food prep or anything like that, you can get a video for the kids to watch. You can stop it when they get to that part and have them do it, you know? And it makes them more independent than you telling them every step. Yes. Oh, someone just asked here if I needed parent permission to videotape. Yes, and almost all school districts have a video release. Like any I've taped in Western Dubuque, we get the students' release, but then you have to get a release for anyone else who might inadvertently be in the pictures. And so I've done that too, because I have made video modeling ones for a couple of my students where I used their peers as the video models, and said, you know, they were the ones saying, this is how you do this is how I wait in line, or this is how I ask for help, and doing it. But I got written permission from all their parents. And in Western Dubuque, the permission slip says specifically, this will never be put on YouTube or any of that stuff, because that really is a fear. And a lot of, when you make iMovies and stuff, now one of the options is, do you want to put this on YouTube? You know, and you're like, no, God, I just want a movie to show. So the trick with video modeling is anything, at least in my experience, that's more than about 20 seconds is too big to email to teachers. So I put it in a Dropbox, which it's a big depository in the sky. I don't know. But I open a file there. I put the video in it, and I can invite specific people to share it. So then, like this one that I'll do tonight, I will invite the little boy's mother and the teacher to share in it, and they will download it to their computers and be able to show it to them, because it was too big to email. So Peers, they are your secret weapon, and they will need input and guidance from you. Peers are great, we all know that, but they can become enablers better than anybody I know. Better than mothers, who are the queen of enablers. So you really have to tread carefully with them. When my daughter was young, my daughter has a form of rickets, and she was always a very slow walker, had a lot of leg pain, and she went to a parochial school with lovely people, and you know, one time I went in first grade to conferences, and the nun said, well, I've been carrying her over to lunch because it's a long walk, and she slows the rest of us up. And I said, put her at the back of the line and just let her go. And, you know, then I found out, like, people were carrying her books to the bus for her and stuff, and I was like, oh, nope, don't let them do that either. And you know, kids want to be nice, so you have to be careful how you use them. You have to make sure they know exactly what to do, and you have to make sure that they're willing to help. And you don't always want to pick the most helpful ones. You know, the ones that volunteer, a lot of ones, those are the ones that are going to make it crazy or do everything for them. In the summer, our autism team does a 5-day training for teachers. And one day, and every day, they have to work with the student. We have students come, and they have to do activities with them. And one day, the theme is social. And so we bring peers in, and the teachers have to plan an activity between the two kids using the peer as the teacher. And I can tell you that every year, they overestimate the skills of the peers. You know, because we will, in the morning, talk about, now, don't forget, besides teaching the kid on the spectrum what he's going to do, you have to tell this kid what they're going to do. And whether it's a 3-year-old or a 14-year-old peer, they will never tell them enough. And these kids are not, I mean, we get good peers, but they don't know what to do either. And the teachers are so worried about getting the autistic kid fine that they forget that their instructors don't know what they're doing. And so I always want to keep that in mind when I'm dealing with peers. A true sign of independence would be for you to stand across the room and watch your kid interact with a peer, play a game, do something with you still across the room. It must be planned, it must be taught, and it looks much more natural than an adult intervening. I mean, the other day in a classroom I was watching, they were trying to get this kid to go to music. And the associate must have said 6 times, go to music. Let's go to music, come on. And finally, one of the peers, bless his little heart, went up and said, David, put your stuff away and go to music with me. David put his stuff away and he went to music. I was like, oh, for God's sakes, you know. But, and so I think that's a route to go. It will work. Because it's much more natural saying, come on, buddy, let's go, than adults saying, how many times am I going to tell you to put your books away, you know, and line up for music? So you have to keep that in mind, that peers are powerful. But just remember, you have to teach them. And don't just pick girls. Girls always volunteer, because that's the way we are. We always want to help, and we're nurturing, you know, so we'll volunteer and go, oh, please pick me, I'll help him. Don't just pick girls. You know, if the kid's a boy, he's going to have to hang with boys eventually. So get some boys that he can develop a relationship with and recognize as a friend, you know. Pick a specific situation and start small. Like, come on, David, put your stuff away and go to music, you know. All right. So the challenge for you guys, come on, is to look at your students' entire day and pick one small part of the day and make a change and build some independence. I tried to put some levity into this. So this says, why do I need to learn potty training? Is it something I'll use later in life? Will it help me get into good college? Do chicks dig guys who are potty trained? Yeah, we hope. So it doesn't have to be a big change, but it should make the student look more like their peers. It could be putting on boots with no help or pulling the zipper up when someone else has started it. That's a minor step, but it's a step. It could be walking down the hall with their books. It could be taking a picture of the assignment for class using an app or using their phone. It could be carrying their own tray through the lunchroom, which for a lot of little kids is a huge step. It could be completing their homework and handing it in with no one reminding them, which would really be nice, wouldn't it? It could be going to the store and getting 4 items independently, getting out the door, having paid for them. It could be going to the bathroom alone. So it can be a lot of things. But don't think academics. Think functional. Think adaptive behavior, because that's the most important thing for their future. Don't tell teachers I said that. Because they're in charge of academics, but in the long run, no one cares who the Aztec god was that you learned in 5th grade. But they will care that you can eat lunch at work and look appropriate. So, building independence can occur anywhere, but the first place I would look are at all the unstructured times in a day, like the lunchroom, recess, the hallway, where we're not telling them a lot of what to do, because that's when they hang with kids, and that's social. So you want them to look as good as they can. The next spot I would look at is at independent seat work time. That's a killer, we all know, because if you're associates, you know. I mean, some kids, it's just so hard to get them to work. Anything you do to decrease his dependence on you will help him be more independent. You guys, you might get out early tonight. So. Okay, task analysis. That's another one of the handouts. And task analysis, if you went to school a really long time ago like me, we learned how to do task analysis where we break every skill into smaller steps. And you figure out every step, like in the 70s when I was in college. And you would say, well, if they're going to go through the lunch line, what are the steps they have to do? They have to approach the lunch lady, punch in their number. They have to grab their milk, grab a tray, grab the silverware, go to the first lunch lady and look at what she's got and say whether they want it or not, hold out their tray. Go to the next lunch lady, decide if they want it, hold out their tray. We go through every step. And then that would be just getting your lunch. That didn't involve, at the end of lunch, where you're going with your tray or cleaning up or anything. So when you pick what you want to change in your student, you're going to do a task analysis. And you really don't have to do it like I did. Like here's one for getting ready for math class. You clear the desks of unnecessary items. You place your math book, a pencil, and the calculator on your desk, and you wait quietly for the teacher to begin class. Okay? Here's one for getting ready for home ec class. You put on your hairnet. You get your books and your items together. You take those materials to the shelves in the back of the room. You put your materials in the assigned place. You go to the closet. You select an apron. You put the apron on. You go to your desk and wait for the teacher. So you look at what activity you want the child to do, and then you decide where he fails or at what point he stops. So if in the going to the bathroom, toileting, because that's a one we do in preschool a million times, if pulling down the pants is the problem, then that's what you target. And that might mean you go in there and do some hand over hand. Here's where you pull, here's where you put your thumbs and the rest of your hands, and then you push, and you push down, and then you cheer when he moves it an inch, or whatever. And the next day, maybe you have to do hand over hand again, but you eventually fade out your prompts or your help until he's doing it himself. And then you keep going with the process, and maybe the next stopping place, you know, maybe it's wonderful that he can go to the bathroom and stuff, but maybe pulling up the pants is the next process. But you just target one thing at a time. So if you're worrying about pushing the pants down, then that's what you work on first. For a middle schooler, I'm trying to think of a good one. Cooperative groups are horrible for middle schoolers, at least the kids I deal with. That special ed kids tend to sit and say nothing or do all of it. There seems to be no happy middle point for those kids. So perhaps you watch them in a cooperative group, and hopefully the teacher will have defined everyone's role in the group, like if he's the recorder. So what's the problem? Is it that he can't spell? That he can't write fast enough? You know, there could be a lot of reasons why he's not getting the notes down. Well then, if he can't write fast enough or spell, maybe he can record them, literally, on an iPad, on a tape recorder, something like that. So what you need to do is just look at it and say, okay, where does he get stuck? And then unstick him. Now I have to put a disclaimer in here. You should probably consult your teacher before you do most of this. Some teachers would applaud you for everything, and others really like to know everything that's going on with their student. So you're probably safer to let them know. But I do know that you people spend more time with them than most teachers. And I think you know them better than most of the teachers do, just because familiarity is, you know, you're there for them. But do make sure you check in with the teacher on it. So, because she may want to, let me see if I can show this next slide. Okay. She may want to give you some help on this. When I introduce stuff to kids, I always look at the situation and figure out what I want to help or what I want to change. And then I mentally, before I start, I count how many times I had to redirect them. So you're going to see, you know, I've got a visual for something I did with a kindergartner in West Delaware. He would come into the room, wander the room forever, and he did not do his morning routine, which was take off his coat, empty his book bag, hand his library book in, and one other thing. And so the teacher and I, just for 3 days, took data on how many times we prompted him to get the 4 or 5 steps done. Then we made him a visual of the 4 or 5 steps, and I went back and counted, and you will see the data later, but it changed. And so that proved that we did something right. So before you make a change, you want to look at the situation and count. You know, if you're standing by the child who's potty training, and you keep saying, pull down your pants, and he doesn't, is it because he can't, or does he need a visual that says, pull down his pants, pull down your pants? You know, will he do it faster, or with no verbal prompts from you? You need to decide that. Then put in your new stuff, and then go back and see how many prompts you needed that time, just to see if you reduced them. You know, and maybe you did, or maybe now he's stuck at the next stop and you're still prompting him. But if you can reduce the prompts, it means you've done something good and something right. Okay, so this is my guy at West Delaware. So Caden, he needed 7 prompts one day. He needed 8 the next to do the morning routine. So we put up visuals with the 4 or 5 steps in it. And the first day he needed 2. The next day he needed none. I did a silent dance of joy. Then he needed one, and what was interesting was the one he needed was for us to point at the pictures to get him started. It was like he needed a, ready, set, go. And so then we hated that more than anything, that he still needed one prompt. So now he does it totally on his own. But we've left the visuals there. He still likes to look at them. And he had been in school. We did this, when was it? In November. So he had been in school for 2.5 months and still wasn't doing it. So the routine has been there. He just hasn't gotten into it. But I could show to myself and to this teacher, she and I were both very excited because then we did other things in his centers. We made them more visual so that I think the whole room changed centers better because they had visuals of what to do and a color system of you're doing red first, blue next, whatever. So I like to keep data, and I know it's not your job to, but this showed us results. This is one, and this is probably more than you want to do. This was one we wrote. This little guy does not greet people. Initiate. He will greet them if you say, "Hi, Joe." He'll look up at you and go, "Hi." And we really wanted him to be the initiator. And so we got very specific about when he's going to do it, with who, and what we'll accept. Now, the thing that's killing him right now is he doesn't know everybody's name. And we can't give him a 1 unless he says their name. I think it's mean, but I lost in the vote. So, but anyway, as you see, we wrote in there, you wait 10 seconds before you give him another prompt. We tried to be very clear so that it doesn't matter if it's the associate or the teacher or the principal. We all know what we're doing. And then we can keep the data on changing him and making him more independent. Because greeting people is an adaptive skill and something you expect grown-ups to do. And granted, he's only 5, but we want him to be a grown-up early. All right. You guys, if you have questions, type them in. Okay. You have to keep in mind that you are with this kid more than anyone else. You can shape his future, and you are making a difference, even though I know some days you want to beat your head against the wall. I have those days too. Epworth will testify to that. But we can change these kids, and we can make a huge difference in them. And they are all good kids deep down. Just some, it's harder to find that. Notice in your days how many times, the first step for you guys is to notice how many times in a day you redirect a student before he follows the direction. And I have a rule in my head that I use, and I say this all the time for kids on the spectrum. If you have to say something more than twice or 3 times to a student, then you need to find a visual to tell them that, because they're becoming dependent on you and on hearing it. And
More than what?
More than 2 or 3 times. And it could be simply writing the word. But then you can point to it, and it's much more subtle than you saying it. So if you're repeating something 2 or 3 times, and it's real easy to get caught up in that. You know, I'll go in and watch kids, and the teacher will say, "Oh, he does it. We just have to tell him 1,000,000 times." And I was like, "Oh God, no!" That disrupts everybody, and then the student just comes to depend on it. You know, they're like, "Well, I don't have to follow it the first 12 times she says it, because she will say it 12 more." You know. Use the prompt hierarchy and the guidelines, because waiting is hard, and I know it, but it really does make a difference. Because if kids, remember, these kids have slower processing than regular ed kids. So whatever the direction was, it might take them the 20 whole seconds to figure it out. So really wait them out to see what they can do, because it'll surprise you sometimes. And remember that you're nurturers by nature and job. And that's good, but remember, as parents, we're nurturers, and our goal is always to have an independent kid. None of us wants our kids living with me. I don't want mine living with me. Now, if they're grown up, I love to see them, but I don't want them living with me when they're 40 years old. So, and we don't want these kids living in a really restrictive place if they don't have to. And here's my last cartoon. You loved us even when we seemed a little strange. And I think that is most of us that teach special ed kids is we do, you know, and like I said at the beginning, if you don't have a sense of humor, you shouldn't be in this job because it'll eat you alive. Questions? Anybody got any questions? If not, you're going to get out early and then you won't tell anyone. Oh, and I have a blurb to read at the end too, so don't go anywhere. No, oh, Decora's typing, it says. We'll wait for Decora. Oh, that's what I'm going to tell you in just a minute. Okay, Decora is not typing? Or are they? Thanks for the information. Great job. Oh, thanks. All right, now I have to read my end of the talk disclaimer. Each participant taking this course for recertification credit will need to write and submit a one-page paper. This paper will be scored pass-fail using the scoring rubric found on the website under the recertification column. It is called Para Recertification Course Assignment Rubric. Please refer to this when writing your paper. This paper should be submitted to Sean Carreau, Delhi Field Office. It's Van Route 7. No later than, and the paper they sent me said November 20th of 2012, so I knew that was wrong. So I, arbitrarily today, picked a date for you all. I'm giving you 1 month.
I think it's actually 1 week.
Is it 1 week, do you think?
So.
Okay, then I won't give you a month. I'll cringe.
Yeah.
Well, see, this, they had...
I read that somewhere.
Yeah, they had not updated it since the November one. All right, so March 20th. Well, March 19th, okay? If you have it to Sean, it's Van Route 7. It's the Delhi Field Office. You may send your paper in an envelope on the Keystone van, or you can send your paper electronically to Sean Carreau. And I will read her email address if anybody needs it. I'll go slow. It's SCUROE@aea1.k12.ia.us. It says, participants not taking this course for credit do not need to write a reflection paper. In about 1 week, Glenda Suko will send you an email and ask you to evaluate the presentation. If you would do so, I would appreciate it. And if you would be kind, I would appreciate it too. I'm sorry the tech stuff screwed us up. So, no more questions? Last 2 were 1 week. Yep. So I'll give you a week, and I'll tell Sean. I just, when I got it today, Glenda had not changed it, so I was going to be generous, but okay, fine. And here's my contact information if you need it for anything. And I only do 4 districts for autism, but I can sure answer anybody who needs me. So let me know if you need something. Okay, guys. Good night. Bye-bye. Oh, well, 20 minutes isn't bad. Oh, you're most welcome.
That's right.